This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. The maze, it's life. Yeah, we're all going to be in that maze and we're all going to hit the wall. And some of us are going to know how to jump over it. Some of us are going to turn around and go backwards. Some are just going to stay there and just wait till somebody comes and picks us up off the floor, if they ever do. My guest today is Cameron Race. And Cameron, when I read your bio, I really don't think your plan in life is really to be where you are today. It's probably a good place where you are, but you went through some turmoil in life. So share your story and let's see how we can help our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, no, that sounds great. First of all, Karen, thank you so much for having me. So very happy to be here. Yeah, so for me, kind of grew up in a home where family wasn't super well off, certainly wasn't poor. Dad worked really hard. Mom stayed home with myself, and I have an older sibling. I grew up playing sports. I was, afforded that ability, which was excellent. Just build social skills and to build self-confidence, all these things. And then around the time that I was like 14 or 15, I started paying attention to and being drawn into gangster movies and just kind of the faster side of life. And so I started experimenting. First it was with smoking weed, and then I started drinking, and it was parties and girls. And so I stepped away from sports, and I focused on selling weed. That's what I did for a number of years, from 15 or 16 until I was 22. And kind of in that time period, if you had asked me, I mean, I would have told you that's what I thought I was going to do with my life, that I was going to go to jail or I was going to spend my life selling weed. And I always had kind of these run-ins with the law. They were close, but it was for, like small little possession charges, smaller things. And I always thought, like, man, if they only knew who I really was, right? Like what they could have got me for. And so it built me up, honestly. Like I thought that nothing really bad would ever actually happen to me. And I still tried to kind of live a life where no one knew what was going on. So like I was still going to college. I was still kind of playing by most of the rules, trying to fit in with society. And I had some people that were close in my inner circle there that had started getting in trouble. And so I started feeling that downward pressure. I grew up in a really good family, a good household. And a lot of what I was doing, my family was aware of. I've always been one of these people that's pretty open and honest with the people that are close to me. And so they were kind of aware of what was going on. And for a number of reasons, I decided this isn't what I want for my life. And so I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I said, I'm 21. I've got no wife, no kids, no real responsibility. And I had always wanted to snowboard. I grew up, again, my dad worked full time. I have an older sister and my mom. So when we would go on vacation, we would go to Florida for the beach because my dad wouldn't go. And I always wanted to snowboard. So I had saved up some money. I moved to Colorado for a year and I snowboarded, and I loved it. I fell in love again with the outdoors and with physical activity. And so that kind of helped shape me, mold me. This was 2011, and believe it or not, like most of the people, they'd be like, "Oh, we had grown up smoking weed. Did you go out there and smoke a bunch of pot?" Because that was like when it was recreationally
Right.
available. And the answer was like, "No, I really didn't." It was a time where I was really kind of cleansing, and so I came back to Georgia because I realized that family was really important to me. I wanted to have a career and I wanted to be able to provide for myself. And so I figured, like, if I can go get a job, then, I'll be able to afford to go to Colorado or what have you. But I ended up being a finance major. And so schooling in Colorado was going to be $40,000 or something for a year. In Georgia, we have this beautiful thing called the Hope Scholarship. And so if you have a certain GPA, then they pay for a portion of your schooling. And so the dollars and cents just didn't
Right.
work for me to stay in Colorado and accumulate some student debt. So I came back to Georgia. I thought I was going to take over my father's business, but it's always been a small business and I was looking to grow it. He didn't want to. I have to respect that because he afforded my family this lifestyle that, who am I to tell him how to run his business? And
Right.
so I grew up working in his business, like started out sweeping floors. Then I learned trade skills such as welding, CNC programming, and then I moved over to kind of the sales side. So I grew up in my father's business, and I had never been exposed to big business. And so I thought to myself, because I was going back to college, I finished my last 2 years in 18 months. So like before I kind of went because it was what was required of me, and then I dropped out to move to Colorado.
Right.
And when I came back to it, I came back to it of my own volition. And so I really buckled down. I paid close attention. I did great. I had like a 4.0 for my core classes, which was finance and economics. I got a job working for a big corporation, a big packaging company, and I started out in the payroll department. And I had kind of a sales background just from all that I did. And so I was processing paychecks for people, and I was looking at the sales guys, and man, those sales guys are making pretty good money. So let me try to get into that side of the organization. And so 6 ways a Sunday, I was contacting the local sales guy, and he wouldn't return my phone calls. And finally, I got an opportunity. I moved over to sales with him. And this is kind of what I would say here for the listeners is, when I was in that sales job, I was absolutely terrible at it. Okay, it was corporate America. It was packaging within that industry. You were selling to a lot of people that have they're trying to figure out Coca-Cola's to how to sell to like these very large Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. And for someone like myself at that point in time, I was 22 years old. And so I just didn't have the knowledge, the experience, the expertise to go in and really to own these rooms. And I was competing with sales guys that had been within the industry for 20 or 30 years. And so what I did was I transitioned from there to working for a regional bank here in my area. And I went through a really extensive training program for them. I landed in a sales role, a business relationship role. So I was managing existing relationships, also cultivating new relationships. And I really excelled at that. And in like 18 months, I went from being new into the industry, really not knowing much about selling loans and deposits and all those things, to being, a top 5%, relationship manager within the organization for my role. And so what I would say for the listeners is like, if you're struggling with something, it may not be you. It may just be the environment that you're in. You may just not have tried the right thing yet.
Right.
Because and so like, don't get down on yourself, just try something new, and you may be extremely surprised. And then the other takeaway too, that I would say is I had some really great mentors at that company. And so what ended up happening was I had, 4 or 5 people that I would call on a daily basis. I would call these people and say, hey, I have a question about X, Y, or Z. And they would give me, how they would solve that problem. And so that's the other thing too, is to have mentors, have people that you can go to ask questions. And the key there is have multiples, because if you have one and you have to call that person multiple times a day, then they may not appreciate how often they're having to give of their time. But if you have a handful of them, then they're not aware necessarily of the fact that there are other people that you're also reaching out to. So
Exactly.
I don't attribute my success to just my own abilities. I attribute it to having, surrounded myself by people that also were doing well. And so that leads me up to this past year. So I stopped selling weed. I said that I stopped when I moved out to Colorado. I was 22 years old, but I continued to struggle with drugs and alcohol addiction over the years. And fast forward to today, I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful son. And my wife just gave birth to our second child, a daughter, which I'm so thankful for. But what happened was, working in the baking industry, interest rates had gone up quite considerably. And so this past year, I found myself in a place where it was on a Wednesday, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our second child. And then the following Monday, I went into my job and my entire department had been let go. And so it wasn't really like, I've always been a very positive person. I don't look at a situation and go like, why me, why me, why me? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what can I learn from this? How can I expand through this? And so I knew that I was an asset. And so I just went straight to an interview process. And what had happened was that interview process, like most people that work for large organizations, it's not the most timely thing that you go through. And so it took about a month or a month and a half to go through an interview with some different banks. and I got offers from all the banks that I interviewed with. But what had happened in the time frame is I realized, I've worked the last 10 years for these other organizations helping to grow their business. I grew up in an entrepreneur background, and that's always been something that I've had interest in. I had a lot of admiration and respect for business owners. And so I'm mulling over that. And then also I kind of had this epiphany that, like, my family, I have this beautiful family, and my wife's in the other room, and I put my son down at night, and then I go into my office and I'm drinking and I'm doing drugs. And it's like, what am I running from? But the thing is, like, for forever and ever, I always had this feeling where I lacked fulfillment, where, like, I just didn't understand my true purpose. Like, I was always searching for something deeper, but I wasn't actually really doing the work necessary to find those answers. I was searching in the wrong places. Like, I would go to the bottle because it would help me feel better. I would, go and just mindlessly watch the latest Netflix special, and because, like, it gave me a dopamine rush. And there was a gentleman that I listened to, this guy Wes Watson. He's extremely brash. He's one of my mentors now. But he essentially was on Instagram, and he's like, the answers are in the work that you're not doing. And that really resonated with me. And so I literally went from being someone that scrolled on my phone all the time, that did drugs and drank almost every single night. I hadn't worked out since like 2015 with any level of consistency. My diet was absolutely just in shambles. And literally overnight, I adopted an early morning wake up routine. I started reading and reflecting. I replaced really TV with reading positive material, listening to podcasts that were, about personal development, and reflecting on what I was listening to, and working out. I work out 7 days a week, every single day. I had this epiphany. I thought to myself, wow, it's no wonder that I used to not stick with this, because when I would implement it into my life, I would work out like 3 days a week. So let's do some quick math here. There's 7 days in a week, 3 days a week. That's less than 50% of the time I'm doing the thing that it is that I want to be doing to get some sort of result. And so, at least for me, and the way that I'm wired, like, I need to do it consistently. And so that way, like, if I do it 7 days a week and I miss one day, it's gonna feel it's like my whole day is gonna feel off, because it is irregular for me not to do the thing. And so I just adopted like a very purpose-driven life over pleasure seeking. And kind of what I decided was, like, I've made these massive changes in my life. I know how unfulfilled I've been. I know the road that I've been down and where I've come to. And I know that I'm not the only one that's walked this path. And I got a lot of enjoyment out of helping business owners. But what I felt like I would get more enjoyment from, and more like deep fulfillment from, and then also selfishly, what would help me to stay the path that I'd found, would be to help others do the same thing. And so since October of this last year, I get on Instagram every single day. I make either a post or a reel with some sort of motivational quote, or just a dialogue, me just speaking into the camera, speaking to my audience. I share some lifestyle stuff. And then also in my story, I'm posting my workouts, I'm posting what I'm eating, just trying to be an inspiration for other people that might be just a few steps, further down than me. I don't claim to be someone that has it all figured out, but certainly believe that, there are people that are further down this road than me, that I aspire to be like, and that I take guidance from. And I'd love to be that for other people. And so that's where I find myself today. I've got a business, a mindset, fitness, and nutrition business, where I help other men and women who find themselves on this similar journey, that aspire for more, but just, maybe lack some of the direction. And if that's the case, then, I'd love to be that for those people. And so, yeah, I'm just, as you mentioned, this is not where I thought my life would lead by any means. I didn't think I would walk away from a career that I've been doing, very well at. I mean, I was making multiple six figures in that career, and I started this business, from scratch. But it's extremely gratifying And so I love where I'm at in life.
You brought up a couple major points. The first thing, you used the word purpose. And most of us tend to go through life without identifying our purpose. And yet some of us are afraid to, because we think people around us are going to laugh at us. I know growing up, I wanted to be in broadcasting back in the 60s. And my parents were just appalled because there were really no women in broadcasting. You know, maybe somebody showed a refrigerator or did a commercial, but that was about it. And my parents said to me, no, you need to be a teacher. If you're a teacher, you'll have a job for the rest of your life. But that, I knew that was not me. I knew what I wanted to do. It took me a long time to get to where I am. But when I go back and reflect, I realized that I used who I wanted to be in all the jobs I had, even if it was a job running a cash register. I was communicating with the people that I was taking their money from. And I think if we can dig deep and say, this is the path I want to take, we shouldn't have to worry about the judgment around us. Now, we all need to make a buck. We all need to put food on our table and have a roof over our heads. So sometimes it's going to be in conjunction with that full-time job.
Sure.
It seems like you fell into this at the right time. I'm sure your wife had seen a downward spiral, knowing that at the end of the day, you were in your office and, drinking and maybe taking drugs and, um, distant from the family. When you made this choice to reach out for your purpose, it probably made you a better spouse and father.
100%. I mean, that was part of my purpose, which I didn't even get to, which is what I tell everyone. It's you have to understand your why. You have to have a meaning, a purpose greater than just you. Because I've been skinny fat. Like, I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. But the reasons that I had to start previously, like to start working out, they were very superficial. I was looking at a specific result that was very superficial. And so when I didn't get it within a certain time frame, then I would feel defeated and I would go back to living the way that I had been. And so, my purpose now is to be the man that my past self and my future self is proud of, to be, someone that is inspiration to my family, that my family can look to for guidance and direction, and then that others can look to for guidance and inspiration. And so with that greater purpose, there are days when I fall back to my lowest level of self that are really hard, and I want to quit. I think about going back to my job and the stability that's there. But again, like, is that really tied true to my, like, deep into my purpose? And when I can get back to that, it helps to re-energize me, get me back into a good place. And so, yeah, it's like that why is so important. That's a lot of what my business is. I'm sure some people might even think it's hokey, but again, like, it's not about the fitness or the nutrition. It's about becoming the person that is able to stick with the habits that give you the outcome that is whatever it is that you're after. So if it's to have more confidence, well, I can tell you that if you are overweight now and you got into shape, you would have more confidence. But we have to figure out, what is your why that you want to become that person in the first place? And if we can get there, then I feel so much more confident in your ability to actually start and stick with it. But if it's just you want to lose the weight and you're not vulnerable and you can't really dig down and find that, those are the people that struggle with it. And I was that person that struggled with it for so long, just to stop doing the drugs, to start working out and keep with it. I mean, at this point, I'm like 9 months sober. I realized that there wasn't a time I'm 34 now, from 33, it's probably 14, so almost 20 years that I didn't have some sort of substance in my life, whether it was alcohol, nicotine, or any number of drugs. There was always a time where I had one of those present in my life. And so, it feels amazing to be here. And also, that it's like why I'm very passionate about this, because if I could find somebody like my old 27-year-old self and speak some sort of wisdom into them, connect with them at some sort of level to where they could go ahead and make the change in their life, then man, how much richer would their life be? How much richer will my life be now at 34 if I had figured out some of the stuff that I'm just now figuring out at that point in my life? And I know we're all walking our own path and we'll get there in our own time, and that's just fine. But also, I don't take a passive approach to life. I think we live in a society now where everyone's so self-consumed. I watched a really messed up video the other day where this gentleman picks up a child and grabs him by the mouth and darts off into a dark alley. And the whole thing was like a social experiment of, is anybody going to do anything? And most people just watched it happen. And so I don't want to be someone who just passively watches everyone else go through life and suffer. I know how terrible I felt when I was overweight. I know how terrible I felt when I was doing the drugs. I know there was deep-rooted causes as to why that was my experience in life. And so if I can have some tough conversations with people, if I can share my experience and make a positive impact on somebody else, I feel like that is my purpose. I feel like that's what I'm required to do.
As I hear your story, we are a generation apart. Okay. You're male, I'm female. I've never really taken drugs, but I've been, my drug of choice has always been food, which is as bad as far as I'm concerned. Um, right after COVID, um, I'm, I had been taking daily walks. I called my doctor one day and I said, "This is ridiculous. I'm not all the time. What is wrong with me?" And she finally had me come in. I took a bunch of tests. Tests showed absolutely nothing. And then they finally did a test and they said, "Because of your age, we are going to identify it as heart failure." Well, I just like, oh, I mean, I sat up and was like, "Oh my God, you know, what are you telling me? Am I dying?" And the doctor said, "I don't even think you have heart failure, but you have a symptom of heart failure.
Mhm.
All your tests show perfect." He said, "Well, I'm going to recommend that you do every day for a minimum of 30 minutes. You have a stationary bike. You can ride it on a hot day, a cold day, a rainy day, a snowy day, a dry day. You have to ride that bike." And the thought of it was just like, I hate this bike. Clothes look better on the bike than I do. I started riding the bike, and like you, it is part of my routine. I don't want to call it a habit because to me, when I create a habit, my habits have not been good.
Sure.
So I had to relabel it as a routine. My complaint in the beginning was, why aren't I losing more weight? And the doctor said to me, "How is your breathing?" Turn it around to that. And I could concentrate on my breathing. I had a purpose for doing this. My purpose was, yeah, losing weight would be great. But the purpose was to create more stamina so I could breathe better. And with that, I started eating better. When I started eating better, it all goes together. And so, like you, I finally found how I could move forward with my purpose. I'm not going to tell everybody that they have to ride a stationary bike every day. I'm not going to tell them they have to exercise every day. We got to find what works for us. And some people prefer being overweight. I mean, I know some big body people who really are happy.
Sure.
And if they are, that's important. If their health is good and they're happy, that's wonderful. But there are too many of us who have been walking around saying there's something that's not right. How do I fix it? And there is a way of fixing it.
That's right.
So you've been doing this now since October. When you look back at yourself last September, what do you tell yourself? Because what do you tell that person from last September? Probably wasn't thinking about doing what you're doing now.
Yeah. Maybe by September was when, because at that point I lost a job. I lost a job at the end of August. And so, like, if we take it back to August, I mean, it's so tough because, again, the message had to be delivered to me when I was open and ready to hear it. And so that's like, I show up and I share the same kinds of messages and stories day after day after day. And so someone that is on my page and I go, man, well, this guy just keeps sharing the same message. Well, if that's you, then like the message isn't for you today. Okay. It's not for you. It's for that other person that's heard it for the 99th time and they really needed it today. And that's what the delivery was. And so, the message doesn't change. Again, like I really do believe that you have to find purpose in life. It's about purpose over pleasure. We live in this capitalistic society. And so it's like we're being pushed pleasure all the time. Why? Because pleasure is easy to sell. It feels good. It's quick. It's dopamine hits. It's the hard work. That's the stuff that is really, truly gratifying, but it's not easy. But at the same time, you have to choose your heart. Like, it was really hard for me to go through life and to feel this lack of fulfillment and to show up as the person that I was showing up as. I felt anxious. I felt depressed. Like, I had all those negative emotions, but I was in this vicious cycle of doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. And so for the message for myself, back in September is, get off your ass, do the work, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. But again, you got to find like that reason to do it. And for me, I tapped into the reason being my family. And so like, especially for, like for those men or those women that don't have a family yet, I think that as you talk to a lot of people, that is something that helps to bring them to a better version of themselves. But you don't have to like hold it in your hand yet for it to be your reality. Like you can go ahead and start working on yourself to attract that wife, to have the family, because that's a lot of the men or women that I talk to, they have drug or alcohol problem. And they're like, yeah, but it's, they see my life and they say like, oh, you have the house, you have the beautiful wife, you have the kids. It's like, you're absolutely right. And I was very fortunate to have arrived at this place in my life while still living kind of in both realms. But most people, you need to become the person before you actually like or attain it, And so it's like you need to start today working towards becoming and having what it is that you want in your life. Everyone talks about manifestation, and I believe you talk to so many high level people and they'll tell you that they already they had written down exactly where they'd be, the people they'd be surrounded by, the things that they would have and obtained. But none of those people, that's not where the story ends. It's with the daily actions that they took to actually get there. And so if you want the family, if you want the kids, if you want the job, you have to start acting and being the person that has those things already. And a lot of the people that achieve high levels of success and attain it, and all, like for me, I don't just want to have the family. I don't just want to have a great job. I don't just want to have money. I want to have it all, right? I want to be a well-balanced person that achieves at a high level. And in order to do that, you really you need to drop the drugs, you need to drop the drink. The physical activity is great because it raises your energy. Before I get on this call, I drop down and I do some push-ups because I know that gets my blood flowing. Like I'm going to show up as a better individual being someone of high energy than someone that just like, oh yeah, it's been a long, hard day, and no one wants that. So what do we do to get in this optimal state? Well, exercise for me is that. Eating healthy is that. You know, if you go crush any number of fast food restaurants, you just not. I mean, in my experience, I did not feel good after those kinds of meals. I felt sluggish. I felt weighed down. And so, you know, whole foods, exercise, ingesting positive material, really just positivity across the board is the recipe for success in my life. And I'll tell you this, like I'm so fortunate to have come across this when I did, because my son now he's almost 2. And so I started on this journey, you know, he was just learning to walk, just learning to talk. And I started exercising on a daily basis. And now all of a sudden, you know, at that point in time, my son would drop down and do push-ups. He would want to get up on the pull-up bar. He would do squats. And so, you know, it's something that like we are leaders. Even if you don't have a family, there is someone that looks to you for guidance and direction, whether you know it or not. And so the decisions that you make right now, other people are paying attention to. And so for that reason alone, again, like if your purpose is to help others, then the decisions don't become so difficult. Like for me, it was like, yeah, I really do. I think that I could be someone that could have 1 or 2 drinks and I'd be just fine. But what if someone in my audience sees me drink 1 or 2 drinks and they decide to drink? And then now all of a sudden they're surrounding themselves with a circle of people. Let's say 10 people that are drinking. I would tell you 1 or 2 of those people has an alcohol problem. And so that person that watched me and then was introduced to that circle could become one of those people. And it was based off of watching someone that they looked up to or they saw themselves in. It came back to me. And so when I start to frame it up that way, it's like, I don't want to be the reason that my kid decides to drink. I don't want to be the reason that someone else decides to make these decisions. And it can weigh heavy on you, but at the same time, it's empowering. Like it gives me true purpose. Like I get goosebumps just even thinking about it, you know? And for so long, I didn't go through life with that level of accountability and that level of cognition. I was very selfish. I was selfish and I was consumed with how I felt, my emotions, and that's really just not what it's about, right?
Well, and you know, our society today is very difficult to live in. And I don't care what age you're at. Um, you know, I hate to say growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was an easier time. It wasn't. There were a lot of other things going on during those days. But I don't remember being an unhappy young child. When my unhappiness started was when I was introduced to society telling us how we should wear our hair, what kind of makeup, what kind of food you should eat, what you should wear, what clothing you should wear, what music you should listen to. And from that point on, I never felt I was good enough. So I was always trying to be like somebody else. I did that till I was almost 50 years old. And then I got a job with a for-profit college. And I went out and I talked to high school seniors about going to college. And I sort of thought it was funny because all my counterparts, people in their early 20s, they had just graduated college. But the students I spoke to listened to me and not as much to the other younger people. Part of that is because I was going back to school now. I knew that my associate degree wasn't good enough. I needed more. I knew that I could do it now, whereas when I was younger, you it was more difficult. When you
Right.
wanted to do it, it's like, oh, I understand this. I can do this work. And that's when I started realizing that instead of trying to look like a cousin, a friend, a neighbor, or a model on TV, I had to look at myself. And I had to find something every single day that I could say I liked.
Mhm.
And it might only be that I like my right eye and I don't like the rest of my body, but I do like my right eye. And when you can start doing that on a daily basis, you become more whole.
Yep.
And I agree with you. When we can help other individuals. And to be honest, I don't know how many people I help, but today is an average day of doing podcasts. I'm doing 4 today. So there's going to be somebody who's going to listen
Yeah.
and they're going to hear your story and my story or one of my other guests. And they're going to say, I should try that. I see what they're talking about.
I love that. It's so powerful, you know?
It is. And yet it doesn't swell my head
Right.
because there once was a time if I would have talked like this, I would have had people around me saying, you know, oh, you think you're hot stuff. No,
Right.
all I'm telling you is that I know how I need to live my life. And I'm not waking up angry in the morning. I'm not going to sleep angry at night. And yet, sort of things that irritate me during the day because I'm human.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're human too? Really? I mean, that's the thing. There's that like that's the thing. No one's claiming to be perfect. It's just like, hey, here's what I've been through and here's what's worked for me. I mean, that's the great thing about even, it's my message is on Instagram. If you don't like the message, unfollow me. Peace be with you. But to have come to a place where I mean, for so long, like when I was going through all that stuff and I was drinking, like I found myself in circles of people that they would share their opinions and I just didn't think it was even worth it to share my opinion. And part of it, I don't think I had really even formulated that deep level of conviction in how I felt, because again, I lacked fulfillment and all these things. And so it's kind of like what you were saying that um I just didn't feel I've stepped into, and now I just would prefer to share my story and just be authentically me. And some people that's going to resonate with, and some people it's not. And again, like if it's not you, then it's not for you. And that's okay too. And so just I think that everyone, I hope that everyone can get to a place in their life where that is, where they find themselves. And again, it's hard. Every day is difficult. And that's why I have this daily process, because I know at the end of the day, no matter how sideways the workday went or the family life went, like I still showed up for myself and I invested the time and effort and energy into making myself a better person. And over the long run, I know that I myself am going to be better for that. And the world around me is too. And like, I'm not here to change the world, but I know that I can have immediate impact on individuals on an individual basis. And for those individuals, like we can make a profound impact on their lives. And then it's a spider web, right? And so, you can't get overwhelmed by it all. And there's no pretentiousness about it. It's just, I'm here to help. And if that resonates with you, then let's talk. And if not, again, that's fine. Wish you the best.
So how can listeners find you?
Yes. So Instagram primarily, my handle is at Cameron_race. That's CAMERON_race, RACE. And so Instagram is primarily where I post. Also, just the whole Meta platform, so it's easy to just share on over to Facebook as well. But yeah, jump over onto that page if you like what you hear. If you need any help with your mindset, your nutrition, your fitness, I'm building out a community of like-minded individuals and would love to be of service.
It's absolutely wonderful. And for those of you listening, I hope you know that all this information will be in the show notes. So there's no reason why you can't find Cameron, especially if you find his message resonating with you. Um, and even if it's not from you, you may know somebody who's looking to make some changes. And all you have to do is say, hey, here's a website, go check it out. Um, just like Cameron, I don't expect everyone to like what I do or what I have to say. And it's okay. God, if that's what you need to do, find the right person. And there's plenty of us out there, Cameron, that are there to help. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. And how old is the new baby now?
Yes, the new baby's just a month and a couple days, and then my son's birthday's in just a few weeks here. So we've got two under two, and a boy and a girl. So we're super blessed, super fortunate. Schedules are all out of whack right now. The baby's not sleeping through the night, so that's been super trying and testing of the process that I've put into place. But I love it. I love the family. It's really the reason for doing all this. So yeah, Karen, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation. It's been excellent and been great to get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you very much. And go give that baby a big hug from all of us, okay?
Will do. Absolutely.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.